So my parents kicked me out. And it's all because I'm not going to marry the person they wanted me to marry. They wanted me to marry somebody from their church who has a good job, good money, but I don't like him. He's always tried to push him way onto me, and I'm not about that. I have somebody that I really want to marry, and he doesn't have the best job. Who cares? I love him. But there's something my parents don't know. Yeah, my soon-to-be husband might not have that much money. Oh, but his grandpa does. Hey guys, I'm feeling a mix of emotions right now. Anger, relief, a bit of guilt even. I'm 27, female, and I've been through a whirlwind. I'm not sure if I handled things the right way, so here's my story. For context, I've always been the good daughter, trying to live up to my parents' high expectations. My parents, let's just call them Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, have very traditional views, especially when it comes to marriage. So I grew up always following their decision, thinking they knew the best for me. After all, my parents have their wealth and career they proudly show me, telling them that I can be like them as well as long as I follow their footsteps. So I continued to do that. Not until I met Kyle, my husband. Obviously, my parents also wanted me to marry a wealthy, polished man that they'd been trying to set me up with for years, but I fell in love with Kyle, who's mixed Latino and was raised by a single mother. They were heavily against my decision and even threatened not to attend or fund my wedding. Well, we married anywho, even if it was just a courthouse wedding without my parents. So Kyle doesn't come from money, but he's one of the hardest working and most loving people I know. He works a blue-collar job and picks up side gigs to support us. Unfortunately, my parents never saw him for the man that he is. They only saw somebody they deemed unworthy of their daughter. They saw him as somebody below their status. When I got pregnant, Kyle and I were struggling financially. Our small apartment wasn't going to work, so I swallowed my pride and asked my parents if we could stay with them temporarily. I thought that they would help us out, at least for the sake of their future grandchildren. They let us move in, but made it clear they were not happy about it. From day one, they treated Kyle like a burden. My mom would make snide comments about how I, quote, could have done better, while my father barely acknowledged Kyle's presence, and it all came to a head one evening, when my dad flat out told Kyle he was a failure in ruining my life. Kyle defended himself, saying he was doing everything he could for me and our baby. I stood by him and told my parents they were being unfair, and that's when my dad snapped. He said if I wanted to stay with my deadbeat husband, I could find someone else to live with, because my mom added that I was just throwing my life away, and demanded I choose between my husband and having a roof over my head. To make things worse, they even tried to bribe Kyle to leave me, offering him money to, quote, do the right thing. Of course, Kyle refused, and we packed our things and left, with no idea where we would go next. Well, here's where things took an unexpected turn. Kyle's paternal grandparents, who he barely knew, had been looking for him for years. They recently passed away and left their entire estate to him in their will. We found out shortly after leaving my parents' house. The estate included a beautiful home, financial assets, and enough money to ensure our child would never struggle. For the first time in months, I felt secure and hopeful about our future. Kyle and I have been living quietly in the house his grandparents left us, focusing on my pregnancy and preparing for our baby. We haven't told anyone about the inheritance, wanting to enjoy this peaceful time without interference. A few weeks ago, I approached my due date. My mother called me out of the blue, and she assumed that we were still struggling and used the opportunity to taunt me, saying things like, "Are you ready to admit we're right about Kyle? It's not too late to come home if you leave him." I was furious. They kicked me out when I was at my most vulnerable, and now they were trying to manipulate me again. I don't know what came over me, but I snapped. I told her everything about Kyle's grandparents, the inheritance, and how we're now living in a beautiful home with no financial woes. There was silence on the other end of the line before my mother muttered something like, "Oh, I see." Since that call, my parents haven't reached out again. Part of me does feel relieved, but another part of me does feel guilty for rubbing our success right in their face. I wasn't trying to be petty, but after everything that they put us through, I couldn't hold back. What do you guys think? Should I have kept quiet, or was I justified in telling them the utmost truth? Update number 1. Hey guys, before I hop into this, let me tell you, I'm sorry it's been some time, a month, and I have some big updates and some frustrating developments. First, I want to thank everybody for their kind words and advice. Your support has meant the world to me, especially during such a life-changing time. The most important update, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl 2 weeks ago. She's absolutely perfect, and both Kyle and I are over the moon. We've been adjusting to life as new parents, and while it's been a bit exhausting, hello sleepless nights, it's also been the happiest time of my life. Kyle has been incredible. He's such a hands-on dad and a loving partner. I feel so lucky to have him by my side. Now for the less than great news. After I told my mom about Kyle's inheritance during our last phone call, I assumed that she would either stew in silence or try to meddle further. Turns out she chose denial. My parents are now telling anyone who will listen that I'm, quote, losing it, and blaming my outburst on postpartum hormones. They're acting like I'm crazy for saying we're financially secure, even though it's the truth. The audacity of it all is almost laughable. These are the same people who kicked me out while I was pregnant, taunted me over my supposed struggles, and pressured me to leave my husband. And now that I've stood my ground and shown them I'm doing just fine, they're dismissing everything I say as hormonal nonsense. It's frustrating, but wait, it gets worse. While Kyle and I were staying with my parents, they tried relentlessly to push me towards this particular guy. I wouldn't even give him a fake name, but this guy, he was the idea of the perfect son-in-law. I mean, he was wealthy, polished, and well-connected. Never mind that I was already married and pregnant, they still insisted that I should have ended up with him. This guy, for his part, was more than happy to get along with their delusion. He would show up unannounced to visit my parents, but would spend most of his time hovering around me. He'd make inappropriate comments about how I was wasting my potential with Kyle, and how he could give me the baby the life we deserve. I always brushed him off and made it clear I wasn't interested, but he didn't seem to care. My parents encouraged his behavior and convinced me that he'd been waiting in the wings when I'd finally, quote, come to my senses. After I told my mom about the inheritance, he apparently decides to take matters into his own hands. For the past 2 weeks, he's been texting and calling me nonstop. He's trying to fake sympathy, saying things like, it must be so hard for you as a new mom. You deserve better than what Kyle can give you. Well, the worst part, he's now claiming that he could be a better father to my daughter once Kyle and I inevitably get divorced. I was livid when I read that. Who says something like that about another man's child? I've been ignoring his messages and calls, but it's clear he's not giving up anytime soon. I've even blocked his number, but he started to message me from new ones. It's crossing into harassing territory, and I'm starting to feel like I need to take some more serious action. Right now, I'm focusing on my little family and just trying not to let all of this nonsense get to me. Kyle and I are discussing our options for dealing with this annoying guy, including filling a restraining order out if he doesn't back off soon. I'm also considering cutting off all sorts of contact with my parents entirely. Their behavior has been toxic for so long, and this latest stunt feels like the final straw. For now, I'm just trying to soak up every moment with my baby girl and enjoy the peaceful life Kyle and I have built together. It's hard not to feel angry or overwhelmed by everything happening, but I'm reminding myself that I have so much to be grateful for. So thanks for reading. I'll keep you all updated if anything else happens. Hopefully, the next time I post, it'll be with good news. Update number 2. Hey, it's been 3 months since my last update, and things have taken quite a turn. A lot's happened, so I thought I'd share an update, especially since many of you were so supportive during my last post. Unfortunately, my parents have not given up on their antics, and they're now escalating things further. As for the guy, thankfully he did back down when we threatened to sue him. Turns out he loves his image more than he claims to love me. So over the past 3 months, Kyle and I have been settling into a peaceful rhythm with our baby girl. It hasn't been easy, but watching her grow and hitting milestones as a family has been incredibly rewarding. Kyle and I have also been slowly decorating and organizing our home, making it cozy, a safe space we've always wanted. During this time, I kept my distance from my parents. They were still spreading rumors about me being crazy and trying to get sympathy from my friends and extended family. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were telling everyone I was, quote, living in a fantasy and probably struggling to get by. At first, I let it go. There's no point engaging with people who are determined to see you fail. But then they crossed the line. About a week ago, I was home alone with the baby while Kyle had gone to pick up some groceries. It was a quiet afternoon, and I was just relaxing when I heard a knock at the door. At first, I thought it was Kyle forgetting his keys, but when I looked through the peephole, my heart sank. It was his parents. Somehow, they had found out where we lived. To this day, I'm not sure how they managed it, but my guess is that they used a combination of online sleuthing and possibly asking people. Either way, they were standing on my porch looking smug and self-righteous, and I did not want to let them in. So I cracked the door open slightly, leaving the chain lock in place, and I tried to stay calm and asked them what they were doing here. They launched into a lecture saying that they had come to, quote, save me, because they were convinced I was delusional and brainwashed by poverty. My dad even said something about how it was time for them to rescue their daughter and grandchild from this mess. Well, when I told them, to leave, they refused. My mother insisted that they need to inspect my home and meet their grandchildren, as if they were entitled to it. The entitlement and condescension were too much for me to handle. But I stayed firm and told them I was not letting them in. Well, guys, the situation escalated further when they began yelling through the doors, saying things like, "We're your parents! You owe us! You'll regret this when your hormones settle down." I felt trapped, especially because Kyle wasn't home and I was alone with the baby. My parents have always had a way of making me feel small and powerless, and this time was no different. But instead of giving in, I took a deep breath. I grabbed my cellular device and called the police. When the cops arrived, my parents tried to play the victim. They claimed they were just concerned grandparents who wanted to see their grandbaby. Thankfully, the officers were professional and respectful. They asked my parents to leave, explaining that they had no rights to trespass on my property to harass me. My parents left reluctantly, but I could see the anger in their eyes because I knew this wasn't over. As expected, my parents wasted no time spinning the story to make themselves look like victims. They've been telling everyone that I called the cops on them for no reason, and that I'm cruel, ungrateful daughter who won't even let them see their grandchild. Now I'm being bombarded with messages from extended family and family friends. Some are outright insulting me, calling me heartless and disrespectful. Others are more passive-aggressive, saying things like, "I hope you can reconcile with your parents, they're only trying to help." It's exhausting, it's infuriating. These people have no idea what my parents have put me through, yet they feel entitled to judge me. I do not regret calling the police. I was alone, vulnerable, and felt unsafe. My parents have crossed so many boundaries, and their entitlement, it knows no limits. They've shown time and time again they don't respect me, my husband, or my choices. As for the people siding with my parents, I'm choosing to block out the negativity. The only opinions that matter to me are those of my husband, my daughter, and the people who truly care about us. Updates number 3. Hey guys, it's me. Did you miss me? Anyways, here I am. It's been about a month since I last posted, and things have been nothing short of chaotic. I appreciate all the kind words and advice many of you have left on my last update. It gave me the strength to stand my ground. Unfortunately, my parents have not let up at all. In fact, they've become even more relentless in their efforts to meddle in my life and make me leave Kyle. You would think that after showing up at my home uninvited and getting the cops called on them, my parents would back off. But no, they seem to have taken it as a personal challenge to, quote, save me. They've been calling and texting nonstop, leaving me long-winded voicemails about how I'm ruining my life and wasting my potential. They've even reached out to extended family members, trying to get them to convince me to leave Kyle. The arguments are the same. You're throwing your life away, you deserve better, think about your child's future. It's exhausting. The thing is, it's not about my well-being or my child. It's about control. My parents can't stand the fact that I'm making decisions for myself, and they're not the ones pulling the string. Even when they came to my home and saw that I had a decent roof over my head and a stable life, they didn't care. They were just angry that they no longer had the power to dictate my choices. One thing that's become painfully clear to me is my parents don't actually care about my well-being or that of my child. If they did, they would not try to be pushing me so hard to tears for my whole family to be tearing me apart. Instead, they're angry and bitter because I chose a path they didn't approve of, and it's eating away at them. This realization has been freeing in a way. It helped me let go of the guilt and doubt they tried to instill in me. I've stopped questioning whether I'm doing the right thing by keeping them at an arm's length. I know I am. My family, Kyle, my daughter, and I come first. Now for some good news, Kyle and I are in the process of buying a new home, and a few states away at that. Kyle recently got a much better paying job, and the opportunity is too good to pass up. We've been planning the move for weeks now, and everything is finally falling into place. The house is perfect for us, a quiet neighborhood, plenty of space for our daughter to grow up, and most importantly, a fresh start from all of the drama. Once we relocate, we'll be very careful not to let my parents know where we are. I've already blocked them on social media and will be taking extra precautions to keep our new address private. However, out of pettiness, I'll be posting one final public post about us finally buying a home and indirectly telling everyone how awful my parents have been treating us for not believing. Don't worry, I will not be posting any identifiable photos or information. Of course, absolutely no location at all. I just wanted to lift up my husband's image. My parents have continuously trashed over the years. Can you blame me? Update number 4. Hey guys, it's been 6 months since I last posted, and I want to share a final update to show you how things have been. Life has settled into a much calmer, happier rhythm since we moved. I can confidently say that we're thriving in our new home. The move has been the best decision we could have made. Our new home is everything we had hoped for and more. The neighborhood is peaceful, and our daughter loves the cozy nursery that we've set up for her. Kyle's new job has been a blessing. He's happier and less stressed, and it's made such a positive difference in our family dynamic. I've also started connecting with a few neighbors and other moms in the area. It's refreshing to meet people without the baggage of my parents' looming presence or their judgmental circle of acquaintances. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe freely and focus on my little family. From what I've heard through the distant relatives and a few friends back in my hometown, my parents are now the talk of their small elitist social circle. Apparently, word spread around their unannounced visit, how they overstepped boundaries, and how they tried to meddle in my marriage. It seems their actions, combined with the fact that I stood my ground and called the cops, have raised a few questions and eyebrows. I'm not gonna lie, it feels like a satisfying thing to know that they're facing consequences for their behavior. My parents have always been obsessed with their reputation, and seeing it take a hit might be the only thing that truly bothers them. Now for a little petty revenge. Before we finally moved, I wanted to send one final message to my parents. Not to reopen communication, but as a small reminder of what they've lost. Using our old address, I mailed them a single photo of my daughter's tiny feet. It was a subtle, but, it was a way of saying, this is what you can never be a part of. Well, you could have, if you hadn't been awful. From what I've heard, they received it. I doubt that they'll ever admit how it made them feel, but knowing it's out there gives me closure. It's my way of saying goodbye to them once and for all. As for my husband's paternal grandparents' home, we'll be renting it out in the meantime for extra income. And maybe sometime in the future, use it as a vacation home. Life is far from perfect, but it's ours, and I couldn't be happier. My parents and their toxic influence are no longer hanging over me like a dark cloud. Every day, I wake up knowing that my daughter will grow up, surrounded by love and positivity without the weight of judgment and control that I grew up with. To everybody who followed my journey and offered advice, support, thank you. It's been a long road, but I finally found peace. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that family is not defined by blood. It's defined by love, respect, and the bonds you choose to nurture. This will likely be my final update. I'm focused on building a happy future with Kyle and our daughter. Thank you for being a part of my story. Guys, here's to a much brighter future.